Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Jens Liebe, Senior Program Expert, UNESCO-UNEVOC, to talk about towards a digitalized world supporting TVET staff. Mr. Jens, are you with us? Yes, it's your show now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Dr. Nana and Dr. Sam, for the opportunity to participate in this webinar. I hope that we have acquired participants by now. Thank you very much for introducing the presentation of our director, Dr. Choi, to frame this webinar. I have the pleasure now to talk about towards a digitalized world, supporting teachers and TVET staff. Of course, when we do that, nowadays we cannot talk about this without talking about COVID-19. COVID-19 has been both disruptive but also an accelerator. Disruptive in terms of the impacts it had on teaching. So when the first peak came, we know that 84% of the learners were affected by it. 1.5, almost 1.5 billion students in general were out of school and affected by this. Many schools were closed nationwide. The situation has changed by now, or by last week. It was stated that about 33% of the world's student population was affected by school closures, and 579 million learners are out of school. But even those that are in school are, of course, also affected. So it has a very big impact. So when we talk about disruption, we talk about school closures, but also a frantic move on the side of the schools to offer distance learning modules. And also we're looking at an unclear, stable future where we may return to old practices with more physical presence in schools. So that is an aspect that is challenging TVET schools around the world. But it has also been an accelerator to the digitalization theme. On the one hand, of course, we have digitalization as a topic, but on the other hand, we also need digital skills to improve distance learning technology and distance learning in general. So the impacts of COVID-19 have certainly accelerated that move towards digitalization and distance learning. So in the past, we've been talking about it for many years, but some have been reluctant to move. In some instances, it has been taken up. But now we certainly see a shift towards digitalization. I guess in times of crisis, we have to be more inventive, and suddenly we make bigger strides towards this. So besides the digital divide that we may have had, we now also have sort of a distance learning divide, and we can see that institutions that had done well with distance learning opportunities before COVID-19, they had still a challenge. They had to upscale these operations, but those who had not put these measures in place, they of course had struggled to a quite large degree. So now let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we address at UNESCO-UNEVOC. This is a bit more about the work that we're going to do in the coming years. So I would like to share where opportunities may arise for further collaboration, and also for inputs from different UNEVOC centers and TVET providers. So when we talk about digital skills and competencies, we have to talk about which digital skills and competencies does TVET staff need today. There, of course, we have on the one hand a demand side. We have to find out which skills are needed by learners. That, of course, is driven by the labor market needs and economic and social political developments. So we need skill forecasting to identify which are the particular needs that learners have, to make sure that we respond to what was presented earlier, the aspect of skills mismatch. We have to address that. We have to make sure that learners acquire the skills that are needed by the market. So the skill forecasting is something very important. The second thing, of course, is we need to make sure both learners and TVET staff have digital literacy, and that is the ability to find, evaluate, utilize, share, and create content using information technologies and the internet. So we have to make sure that both learners and TVET staff are well versed in digital tools. Now, when we look at the supply side, that's basically the side of governments and TVET schools. We, of course, need to have a structural element where we talk about introducing digital skills that have been identified as needed, that they're anchored in curricula and qualification frameworks. That's not going to be so much the topic of this conversation today. But there are structural adjustments that are important to make at the national levels. What we're focusing a bit more on today is what you see in this lower part of this pie chart, the implementation in teaching and learning. And this is not only something that affects teachers alone, it is something where we have to look at institutions, at teachers, but also at new forms of teaching and learning. And for that, we need to have innovative ideas to move forward. So when we look at the institutions to start with, we have to talk about institutional readiness. So what can TVET institutions do to be ready for digitalization? And there we need innovative institutions and we need agile institutions. To support that along the way, UNESCO-UNEVOC has developed a tool that we call UNEVOC Innovation Framework. It is a tool that has been developed and tested in a project that was called iHubs. That's coming to an end. It was tested with about 10 UNEVOC centers that are perceived as having different elements of innovative practices. These institutions were from Africa, Europe, and Asia. So it's tested in different contexts, and we're now developing this into a UNEVOC innovation framework that will be published relatively soon. So for innovation, of course, we have quite a number of different elements. We need to have innovation in leadership and organizational practices. We need to have a good understanding of the skills and innovation ecosystem that institutions are located in, so the interactions with the local industry and the labor market demands. TVET institutions have products and services that need to be innovative, and last but not least, what we're looking at today a bit more is the teaching and learning processes. Those have to be identified and understood. So with this tool, you're guided in gathering data about these different dimensions, and in this toolbox I've just presented a few of those indicators that relate to teaching and learning. So the point of this tool is to gather data, to analyze it and discuss it then with different stakeholders. This can be senior management, administrative staff, teachers, but also students. And then develop an institutional strategy and an action plan to move forward to make sure institutions follow a pathway of innovation. So what you can see here in the field of teaching and learning processes, in-service teacher training opportunities are an element that institutions should to identify. We talk about the tools that are deployed in teaching and learning. Deployment of innovating teaching and learning experiences, which is something that probably has to be revisited in the move from classroom training or from practical training face-to-face to the distance learning training, and a few of the other elements that you can see that are presented here. So apart from learning about your own institution, the second important part is also to build consensus with the staff, because as we said, it's not only about teachers, it's about implementing change, and by implementing the views of different stakeholders, it's also probably easier to implement change. Because if we want to implement change, often it's much easier if it's carried by all and it's not by instruction. So buy-in to move forward is an element that can be achieved also by applying these tools that involve the views of different stakeholders. When we move on to distance learning, we have to ask, how does digitalization affect teaching and learning, and what forms of distance learning exist and how effective are they. Oops, sorry. Here we have two different elements. One is, of course, the technology question that often comes up. It's the question, which tools should we use as TVET schools to move towards distance learning? And there is a great variety of tools that is available. It's very difficult for us to pinpoint which ones there should be recommended. However, we can provide an overview of different types of tools that are available and give some sort of a categorization for which elements these tools could be used. So what you can see here is a link to UNESCO's Global Education Coalition. That's a coalition of, I believe by now, about 140 organizations that work together to support COVID response. And there's a list of, a list of distance learning solutions that is categorized for different types of interventions. So whether it's digital learning management systems, whether you need systems that are built for users that basically that use mobile phones a lot, software that is useful for situations where offline functionality is of importance, where, for example, many of the learners don't have large data packages on their smartphones and or on their devices and cannot follow continuously. Tools for self-directed learning, which is an important element in distance learning as well, as we know. Elements for live video collaboration, which are also very important to make sure that there's still interaction between teachers and learners. And tools for teachers to create digital learning content, so they're supported in developing their material and making sure that it also follows new quality standards that are probably different from school or classroom teaching when you compare it to online teaching. But the second element, of course, is quality, and there's an important element to consider. There are different forms of distance learning that we can distinguish. There's synchronous distance learning, asynchronous distance learning, and hybrid learning. So synchronous learning is where teachers and learners interact at the same time. So where learners can also get direct feedback from the teacher whenever they have a question, or whether they want to see if they've done something the right way, or whether there needs to be some corrections to or modifications to what they have learned. In the asynchronous mode, it's a system where the learner receives a task, but is doing this at a time, or trying to address this task without the direct feedback of a teacher. So that is the case when, for example, the learners receive tasks by email, or they do video-based learning where they cannot ask a question and get a direct answer. And then there are hybrid models where combinations of these are there, where teachers or where learners receive material for self-guided learning that they can address at their own pace whenever they want at any given time, but also elements of communication where a learner can get feedback from the teacher. So it's a combination of those two. A particular challenge that we have in TVET, of course, is the part of practical work. It's not only about acquiring theoretical knowledge, it's the big challenge of making sure that the practical element still is considered, even if we're trying to implement more modes of distance learning. And to sum up many of the elements of quality in distance learning, I'd just like to put one quote that has recently been made, or a statement that has recently been made in a webinar of UNESCO. It's that instructional videos alone are not as effective as face-to-face teaching, but a mixture of different teaching methods leads to better results, such as personalized learning, which is very important, collaborative learning with clear goals. Clear goals are also very important, so that learners understand what is really expected of them, and regular feedback from the teacher. So if we cut out the regular feedback, that is really where students then don't really know anymore whether what they're doing is the right way. It might also affect their motivation. So we should really try to find a way to make sure that this regular feedback remains an element of distance learning, even though we have to revert to this. Last but not least, I would like to say a few words about teachers and trainers. What support can TVET teachers and trainers get to champion digitalization in TVET? And as had also been mentioned by our director earlier, we have just recently published Trends Shaping TVET Teaching study. So that is available from our webpage. And there are 10 trends that are being presented there. We don't have time to go through all of them right now, but I would like to just pick out one graph here that you can see on the future focus of in-service training for TVET staff, because of course we can make sure that new TVET staff can learn about distance learning in their training. But we cannot wait for a generational change to let this knowledge seep into TVET institutions. So we have to make sure that in-service staff receives training to pick up on the technology use, different modes of teaching, and so forth. And I don't want to go to all of those points here, but if you look at the part of pedagogy, it's very important that we have effective use of new instructional tools and educational technologies. And there, we probably have to reconsider whether the old traditional classroom teaching methodologies are also applicable in different distance learning modes. And it's quite clear that in-service teachers need opportunities to learn that themselves, but also to have some modes of exchange and to get support. So what is very important is that there is strong and flexible collaboration between the teachers and IT staff as well, that there is opportunities for them to learn about different things. Maybe this can be through different courses or micro-credentials on the use of certain tools. But also, as we can share from an example from a UNEVOC center in Finland, for example, they have at the institution an online pedagogy support task force for teachers, where they can support each other with questions that come up. Because what we know is that it's a challenging situation for all, and many have good ideas, and it's an important, if we want to move forward quickly, it's very good to make sure that teachers also can support each other in both the challenges, but sharing also the solutions that they have found to address those things. So gathering feedback and learning from feedback is something that is probably very important and can help us move forward effectively a lot quicker. In the modes of delivery, probably also an important element that pertains to the practical part is project-based learning in the use of digital tools. So there can probably be, depending on the subject matter, innovative tools of giving tasks of a practical nature that are project-based, and then a presentation back to teachers. So there can be further elements of learning in that field. Last but not least, I would like to point out an important element. As you know, UNESCO-UNEVOC has the UNEVOC network. It's an international network of TVET institutions around the world. Currently, we have about a bit more than 250 institutions in more than 160 countries. This network is composed of ministries, national bodies, research organizations, and training providers. And we can really only invite everyone to make use of this network, to share experiences and to learn from each other, to make sure that we can take forward these needed changes for digitalization and distance learning as quickly as possible. We're happy to have Polytechnic Malaysia organizing this event. We also have a second UNEVOC center in Malaysia, UTHM. And last but not least, our next speaker from Shenzhen Polytechnic. Shenzhen Polytechnic is also a UNEVOC center, so we're very happy that an additional UNEVOC center is taking part in this webinar. Last but not least, I would like to mention a project that we have at UNESCO-UNEVOC. It's called Bridging Innovation in Learning in TVET, or in short, BUILD. That is a platform where we wanted to activate the experience that we have in Europe on a variety of different topics, which include digitalization, entrepreneurship, greening TVET, elements of migration, and how all of these things enter in new qualifications and competencies. And we're currently entering a phase where we want to bridge these experiences of Europe with Africa and Asia. So there will be platforms for exchange, and we believe that collaboration through knowledge exchange is what really will bring us forward faster. So we invite the UNEVOC centers in Africa and Asia to take part in this dialogue. And with that, I would like to pass back to Dr. Nana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jens, for that presentation. I can see that there are not much questions at the moment. Please do send in your questions so that we can ask our renowned speaker, Mr. Jens, some questions so that he can answer. But before that, I would like to ask maybe Jens' point of view. We are talking about digitalization. I'm a digital person. I believe in digitalization, but there are many countries out there, there are many areas and districts out there who are not yet well equipped with digital technology. From your point of view, from UNESCO-UNEVOC's point of view, how should we look at it?
Yes, thank you very much. That is indeed a very important question. I had not looked at this element because, as you can see, even within digitalization, there are many, many topics that we could spend a long time to discuss. So I did not address so much the distance learning challenge where online learning is probably a bigger challenge, but you're touching a very important point. There are many different forms of online learning, of course, of distance learning. It can be in many places it reverts to radio programs, it reverts to TV programs. These are so a combination of TVs and books, for example. But these are, of course, the instances where this important element of direct feedback is a challenge. So there we have to try even harder to make instructions clear, easily to understand, to not overfreight learners with too many requests of tasks, which is also something that we've heard learners struggling with, that the instructions are too many and sometimes not clear. So this is a big learning experience that we should try to address as quickly as possible. So of course, when we talk about the digital learning tools, we're talking about a quite privileged situation, often where we just have to talk about opportunities to increase bandwidth and make sure there are enough digital devices that we can give out as loans to students that don't have access. But certainly we should not forget about those where distance learning through digital means in terms of computer use is not possible.
Right, thank you, Jens. There's one question here that's popped up. Are these digital technologies for free? If not, are they affordable enough to secure? Are these digital technologies, I think you're referring to the LMS and all of that you were talking about?
There are many standards that are for free, so that is possible to identify opportunities that are that don't necessarily bear a cost. But of course, there are also companies that offer services for a charge. What is the right choice depends on the situation. But I think the key point is the page that I've provided the link to. It gives a starting point to first to categorize different tools, because there's a wealth of tools available, and it can easily be challenging to identify what tool should be used for which type of solution. So this is helping people in terms of that it is categorized, and you can browse a couple of different tools that are available and identify which ones are the right ones for you.
Okay, thank you. I've got one, this is from Vicky from UNESCO-UNEVOC. There seems to be a confusion that this webinar should have started at 3:30. This is what was indicated in the poster. It's okay that I think we would replay her video towards the end of the of this webinar, so that we can everyone else can have a look at it, right? So another question is, if you have one more question, is what emerging skills should TVET teaching staff be trained in? What emerging skills should TVET teaching staff be trained in?
That is, I guess, a very contextualized question. If it's about identifying the use of digital skills in the delivery of the certain subject, there can be quite a number of different elements that are in there. But I think we have to differentiate between the content and the form of delivery. So in the content, I think what is very important is relation between industry and teachers, because the exact demand, I think, can really largely come out of this interaction. And what we had talked about earlier, this skills mismatch, I think can be best addressed if there's a good understanding of what form of digitalization is required in the respective professions to be integrated. So that, I think, has to come out of a national assessment or assessment of between institutions and the surrounding industry that they work with. Regarding the learning part or the distance learning part, I think we should certainly keep in mind the possibly changed didactics that are needed in distance learning to account for the different situations of face-to-face learning to distance learning. Probably also some reflections on socio-emotional competencies of teachers and trainers, because if learners are learning from their home, they might not have situations that are so conducive to learning. So for many learners, it's also a way, by going to a school, of removing themselves from situations that they have at home, where they have no quiet space to really study and learn. So these are additional challenges, and I think teachers need to get a better understanding of what they have to do to make sure learners can be effective in their training.
Very much, Jan. Thank you very much, Jan, for that presentation and explanation. It's quite something that you have shown us on how TVET teaching should be organized and thought of, and those are the points that we will take into consideration when we are planning for our teacher training, whether in service or pre-service. Right? So with that, we conclude with the second panelist. Now we would like to bring your attention to Shenzhen, China. Let us pass the presenter rights to Shenzhen for a while before we invite them in. Hold on. Okay, now Professor Yuri, you are now online. You have about 15 minutes to do your presentation. Please proceed.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank the host, the organizers, for providing this platform to share what we do. Our topic today is innovating TVET teaching and learning with AI and innovation ecosystem. I would talk about 5 different topics. The first one is our profile. In the southern part of China, next to Hong Kong, it is Shenzhen. It is one of the first batch of the special economic zones. Right now, we have 5 campuses with around 30,000 students, around 2,000 staff, and many subjects and disciplines. Our mission is to provide interdisciplinary, innovative, high-caliber technical and skilled human resources to serve the country. And our vision is to make a pioneer in TVET innovation and share Shenzhen solutions with international TVET community. As Shenzhen Polytechnic, since its establishment, have achieved a lot of awards. In the 1,423 higher vocational colleges in China, we ranked first. We are also named the UNESCO-UNEVOC iHub this year. Then I'd like to talk about systematic innovation framework of our school. We have so many different aspects of innovation, from the conceptual innovation to the TNL, applied R&D, social engagement, INE, student development, green, and quality assessment innovation. And the third part is the AI's impacts on TVET. As we all know, AI is a kind of automate activities associated with human thinking. It is the key driver of the fourth industrial revolution, and AI skills will become the future core skills everybody needs. In 2015, Jobs and some other authors estimate that the change brought by AI would be 10 times compared with that in the industrialization. So the impact will be around 3,000 times. And Frey also calculated that all jobs offered in the US economy fall in the high-risk category that are easily automatable in the next 2 decades. In 2018, PwC estimates from 2017 to 2037, AI will displace 26% of current jobs in surveys, construction, industry, and agriculture. That is to say, in the future 3 decades, AI will cause impacts on 501 million jobs in China. According to Ms. Lu Xing, the chairman of the Chinese Society of Technical and Vocational Education, in the future AI era, there will be 4 types of talents needed. The research, scientific transformation, application, and operation talents. And the third and fourth accounts for 70%. They will be provided and educated by TVET institutions. And also, it is said in 2018 that it will become increasingly important to focus the education system on competences. So the 3 areas of digital competence of educators would be the professional, pedagogic, and learners' competence. In 2019, the UNESCO proposed the Beijing Consensus on AI and Education, recommending governments and other stakeholders to use AI to empower teaching and teachers, to use AI for learning and learning assessment, and to develop values and skills for life and work in the AI era. That is to say, AI empowering education actually match with the 4th goal of SDG, quality education. Since 2013, China have regulated over 1,000 policies about AI. Shenzhen Polytechnic, under the guidance of the government of China, we also developed our own solutions. The first point is developing the AI action plan of Shenzhen Polytechnic. Second one, establishing the school of AI to offer AI-related programs. Thirdly, establishing the Institute of Applied AI Technologies for Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, engaging in applied research on AI. Fourthly, transforming all education programs by embedding AI technology into curricula. Fifth, offering 2 common core courses on AI to all students. Sixth, building a 5G smart campus to empower teaching and learning. Seventh, jointly establishing a robotic training school with the top enterprise. This is our action plan. We have 20 different articles about that. And this is our relevant AI-related programs and the 2 common core AI curricula. And the fifth aspect is innovation ecosystem with sectors and enterprises. What we do is to cooperate with enterprises to build a school, industrial schools, so as to build an innovation ecosystem. By now, we have cooperated with many companies, including the global 500, top 500 companies, building 11 industrial schools. We have 8 jointly built programs. The first one is jointly develop high-quality programs. We focus on the high-end technology, including the 4 pillar industries in Shenzhen. We have 23 programs for emerging industries, accounting for 28%. We talk about 79 programs. We have 2 plus 8 plus N program clusters cooperate with Huawei and Alibaba, building the industrial standards. For example, for a better matching of the requirements of the IT industry, we develop a program together with Huawei. We have coupled the curricula and qualification, producing market-oriented graduates. The second point is jointly develop curriculum standards. Huawei, Ping An, and BYD, they have their industrial standards. We transform them into curriculum standards and further develop them into learning resources, producing over 200 textbooks. And the third point is jointly build an effective faculty team. The first one is to formulate standards. The second one, employ enterprise experts as teachers. Then we offer work-based training for teachers and building mixed teaching teams. The fourth point is jointly establish R&D centers. By now, we have already set up 10 applied technology innovation centers and 10 public technical service platforms. The fifth point is to jointly develop qualifications and certificates. We have introduced over 71 international qualifications and also developed 10 qualifications with Alibaba and other enterprises. We have embedding the qualification standards into program curricula and quality assurance systems so as to better serve our students and our teaching and learning. The sixth point is jointly offer INE education, cooperate with Alibaba and many other enterprises. We have 5 interdisciplinary learning centers. We have the well-known enterprise. We have cooperated with well-known enterprises. From enlightenment education to the preparatory, professional, and practical education, our education model has achieved the national education achievements for the first prize. And the seventh point is jointly deliver enterprise-ordered class and skills training. In the previous 2 years, we have the modern apprenticeship in collaboration with them. by setting up enterprises campuses, recruiting and training more than 8,000 students. At the same time, we jointly built 10 industrial schools to upskilling the labor force of industrial transformation. In 2019, we have trained over 180,000 trainees and also provide qualification assessment for over 100,000 people. The eighth point is jointly going global. In Malaysia, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Germany established 6 TVET centers in these 4 countries. What we do is to cooperate with leading companies in industries or the global top 500 companies to provide TVET trainings along the Belt and Road. These 2 pictures were shot in March and October in 2013. At that time, Dato Seri Idris Biswan, the former Minister of Higher Education Malaysia, and another former Deputy Minister of Higher Education Malaysia visited our school. In 2013, we have established a Chinese language center. And in 2016, we established the Chinese language center in another one. And in 2018, we also established cooperation relations. In 2018, in September and October, we have provided the training of cross-border e-commerce and ICT, achieving great results and feedback. So this is all about my sharing. And last but not least, I am looking forward to your visit in the Shenzhen Polytechnic, the iHub. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Liu, for that presentation. It's an awesome presentation. Yeah, it's an awesome presentation. I just like to have I have one question from my side. Are you saying that the future of TVET lies with AI?
Yes, I agree.
Yes, I agree. Okay.
I think with AI empowerment, the productivity and efficiency of education will be definitely improved.
Okay, thank you very much.
I got one question too. In your presentation, you mentioned about in one of your slides, focus education on competency rather than skills. What do you mean by this? I hope I'm not mistaken by that. Focus education on competencies rather than skills. Can you elaborate that?
Can we go through your slides again? Maybe you can see where it was. Can you show your slides again? No, no. More. Next. Next.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, yeah. Oh, back. Let's go back. Back. Slide number 3. Slide number 3. No. Next. Next.
My understanding of the question is like this. Because traditionally, during the TVET education, we focus on skills development on one discipline or one subject, and that will not be enough in the
This one.
future
Yeah, this
market
one.
and in the future development. In the future, our learners, our students need a kind of transverse competence or transverse skills that can be adapted according to the change of different requirements and combined with special or professional knowledge and skills in a specific subject. That should be the perfect combination of skills or competence kit that will fit the requirement of the future societies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a question from the audience or participants. What challenges did you face in developing and implementing your innovative approaches? What challenges did you face in developing and implementing your innovative approaches?
那还有一个观众提出的问题，就是说，在控制定以及执行相应的学校的这个创新体系的时候，您遇到了哪些挑战？ I think the biggest challenge we face is in the jointly deliver executed class and skills training. Because to cooperate and collaborate with enterprises wasn't always very easy.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any more questions?
I think just one comment.
Yeah.
From all the enablers for innovation, I think to create the innovation ecosystem is one of the hardest or the challenging things that we can achieve. For example, is to create an environment that encourage innovation, to have a student have a free hand to innovate, what do you call, try and error, without penalize them, that kind of environment. Because usually we usually use assessments to assess students, to penalize them when making mistakes. So this is, I think, one of the great challenge that how do TVET institutions provide this room for innovation, trial and error, experimenting with things, So this is only my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. Probably one last question from me. If TVET, if AI is the future of TVET, if AI is the future of TVET, then will there be a time when we can draw a clear line between high skills AI and low skills AI? Will there be a time? I think it will. Where we can call high skills AI and low skills AI, because everybody is into AI also. Thank you very much. You've answered me. You have answered my question by showing this slide again. So I see the different categories of AI, from high level AI to the lower, the fourth category of AI. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, I would like to thank Shenzhen Polytechnic for their participation and their sharing of knowledge. We are very, very interested to know more about how your AI ecosystem works. Maybe we should visit you, or you come and visit us and give us more inputs and so on how we can bring AI into TVET, so that we can also be part and parcel of a bigger AI movement as far as TVET is concerned. Thank you so much, Professor Liu. Okay, now for the fourth and final, but there will be a video being shown towards the end. But now we'll bring you back to Malaysia, to one of our most senior polytechnics, the oldest polytechnic, Untitled Polytechnic, 1969. This is the first polytechnic, and together with us is Dr. Izwa binti Ismail, Deputy Director of Academic. She will be talking about an interactive game, a virtual game or virtual teaching and learning platform that they have designed to teach students basic structure and architecture. So I pass the mic to you, Dr. Izwa. All yours. Hold on. Okay, let's have a go. Right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to Polytechnic Unku. My name is Izwa binti Ismail. I am the Deputy Director Academy of Polytechnic Unku. So recently, world has been hit by the coronavirus pandemic that has had profound on every aspect of life, including the academic sector. And during the pandemic, the remote learning become a lifeline for education sector, but the opportunities that digital technologies offer go well beyond a stopgap solution during a crisis. And then the digital technology offers entirely new answer to the questions of what people learn, how they learn, and where and when they learn. Technology can enable lecturers and students to access specialized materials well beyond textbooks in multiple formats and in ways that can bridge the time and space. And similarly, virtual laboratories that give students the opportunity to design, to conduct, and to learn from the experiments rather than just learning about them. And as we all know, the virtual reality has been on the market for the several years now and is primarily in corporate training to train people on high-risk jobs such as flying an aircraft. While gamification has also been picking up speed in the last few years as a viable training solution, and for me, a blend of these tools may bring learning process to the next level. So, on the other hand, in Polytechnic Unku Omar, the virtual reality with the adaptation of the gamification elements have been developed and applied in architecture studies. So, with me today are two young lecturers from the architecture department, Ms. Sue and Mr. Amir, who developed this virtual reality module. So, without further delay, let's rewatch how it works. Okay, we begin with the task first. The user will use the headgear and hold the controllers. The right controller functioning as the selection controller, while left controller will control the movement. We can see in the screen displaying the gamification interface, the Visual Studio's structure and architecture. This application has been designed by our lecturers using the game development software Unreal Engine. Okay, Amir, we can start. There are two modes for user to select. first mode is the tutorial mode. This mode dedicated for the first time user, while the game mode is ready to bring along the user to start their visual experience. And then we can also see the icon to load game for those who didn't finish their work in previous session. Okay, Amir, let's start. This game created 3 levels as any other game: easy, medium and hard. In this demonstration, we will bring the audience to play along in the easy mode. We also have free play mode where users can just play along without structured step. Okay, before we start, user need to sketch the drawing before they transfer it to the virtual building development project in the Visual Studio Structure and Architecture. The preliminary sketching must have been discussed by the group of students, while lecturers will guide by sketching the particular design. Okay. So back to the game environment. This is the environment where we will build the guardhouse on the particular platform. Our first step is to build the structure by placing the column on the ready-made foundation. So user need to choose various type of column with different size and weight. Again, the selection must be made based on the sketching that had been made earlier. Okay, Amir, have you finished? Okay, next task is to choose the beam type. Okay, a beam is a structural element that primarily resists loads applied laterally to the beam axis. In this game, user need to choose from various type of beam based on the dimension and weight. So we can see here, Amir designing his own beam structure. Okay, so next is the third step, which is the ceiling concrete slab to complete the structural work. Okay, Amir, thank you. We already finished the structural work. So we move to the architecture part. The selection of various types of design for wall, windows and railing can be made and choose. Okay. This process is exactly like real world. Okay. Okay, Amir, thank you. We move to the final stage, which is applied for roof type. So we have 3 types of roof type, which is the wood shingle, slate tile, and metal deck. Okay, then the final finishing is the wall floor to select pen or texture, the wall floor and texture. Okay, Amir, thank you. We already finished our guardhouse, and our design today has total weight of 39.30 kilonewton. So Amir, let's run the resistance simulation. Yes. Okay. The resistance simulation is by increasing the load value on the top of the building, and we can see the simulation to show the structure failure condition. Okay. So this design will be rated Then the score is 27. The red highlights show failure parts of the building, and students need to be alert and find out the solution for next session or design. Okay. Okay, Amir, thank you. Besides the easy mode, we have the medium mode. Okay. This is the medium mode game where they can design the single story house. And the other one is the hard mode. In the hard mode, the students will have the experience to design the double story house. So after finish designing, the marks from every group or individuals will be collected to select the winner, and we can also organize for game visual competition. The students, of course, will be super excited as well as the lecturers. Okay. Thank you, Amir, for the very interesting and interactive demonstration. Okay, thank you. That's all from us, from Polytechnic Ongku Omar. Back to you, Dr. Nana. Okay, back to you, Dr. Nana.
I'm facing here. Thank you so much, Dr. Izwa and Polytechnic Ongku Omar team for sharing that gamification and also a small program that you have developed for, I think, the first year architecture and design students. We have got one question in the chat. Can we have a look at the question? Do you incorporate elements of green building design? Do you incorporate elements of green building design?
Okay, this subject is focused for structure design. So might be later on we can improve and add any other elements.
So in other words, at the moment, the green element is not yet being brought into structure design.
Yes.
Okay, but it can be.
We will plan for to embed the green element inside the module.
Okay, all right. Still consideration of materials. Okay. No, that one. I don't understand that question. Still consideration of materials. In terms of I think in terms of consideration of green elements of design, in terms of materials, I suppose you were showing about tiles and paintwork and so on. Did we take into consideration the materials that are green in nature?
Again, Doctor.
Not yet.
We put it in the new picture for the time we just focus on the structure.
Okay. So you are starting off with the understanding of structure, and then later on you're saying you would implement and will add on to having green knowledge being put in as part of the program, right?
Yes. Thank you for the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, since is there any more questions from the participants for the Ongku Omar Polytechnic gamification for structure and architecture? So far, my question will be this: so far, students from which semester are using this frequently?
Semester 1 and 2 in year 1.
In year 1, okay. Yes. So this program is more for year 1 students. Okay, thank you very much, Izwa, for participation. Please stay online. We are going to next relook at the videos that we showed earlier on for the benefit of those that came in late as due to some miscommunication that we had among ourselves. But it's okay. I will replay the video. The video that is coming from is an opening speech from Dr. S.H. Choi, Director of UNESCO-UNEVOC, International Center for Technical and Vocational Education and Training in Bonn, Germany. The statement or the title of the video is State of TVET and Emerging Technologies.
Good afternoon to our distinguished speakers and participants. First of all, I'd like to thank the Department of Polytechnic and Community College Education of the Ministry of Higher Education of Malaysia for organizing this webinar and also for promoting collaboration among TVET institutions. Globally, we are going through a time where we have no clear answers to many emerging questions. So it is vital to learn from each other's experiences as they are unfolding. I hope that this webinar becomes a useful occasion for all of you where you will be able to find some insights into the questions that you may have. Now, among many issues, factors, and contexts that we have to assess in projecting what the future of a TVET would or should look like, I would like to highlight 3 issues. First, mismatch of skills. Second, green skills. Third, of course, digitalization. I will say a few words about the profile of the TVET system of the future. First, skills mismatch. One of the most important things for TVET policymakers or practitioners to ensure is that TVET produces skills that are demanded by the labor market. But skills mismatch continues to be an issue. There are people who are underqualified, but there are also people who are overqualified. For the underqualified, the problems include a low quality of work, low productivity, or simply no chance of getting a job. For the overqualified, the problem is often individual frustration, which can lead to a high staff turnover. An overqualified working population also represents a wastage of investment, both public and private, in education and training. Now, here are some statistics from the ILO, and there are nearly 1 billion workers whose jobs do not match the education levels. The problem is more prominent in low-income countries, where there are many underqualified workers. The problem in middle-income countries is overqualification. For Malaysia, we looked into OECD data. The skills matching rate is pretty good, about 80% matching, 13% overqualified, and 18% underqualified. Interestingly, the worker shortages in Malaysia are in elementary occupations, whereas the surplus is among skilled workers. This pattern of a skills imbalance has a lot of implication for the country, which will serve as an important point of reflection. Now, let us look at green skills. According to a report by the World Economic Forum, 2/3 of all jobs, or more than half of the world's GDP, are at risk if the threats to nature and to our ecosystem are not addressed in time. The collapse of biodiversity and ecosystem is one of the top threats facing the entire humanity. One cannot talk about our future or future of a TVET without addressing these threats. So it is clear that we have to move to a green decarbonizing economy. On that note, we have good news. The green economy can create millions of jobs, and a large part of all the jobs can be reallocated. But of course, this prospect is not to be taken for granted. Workers have to be upskilled or reskilled, and we will have to accept the reality that there are jobs that will have to be phased out. However, this upskilling and reskilling in greening Tibet is not that simple. Greening is one of the areas where we have the most serious training issue for teachers. Now, digitalization. Digitalization has taken hold, and some countries are more advanced than others, but for all, it is no longer the future. It is the present. But are we ready? Not exactly. Even in Europe, more than half of the working population needs upskilling or reskilling of their digital skills. Now, the question here, which I think it is critical, is whether our TVET institutions are capable of providing this much needed training to our future workers. Unfortunately, before TVET institutions can upskill or reskill their learners on digitalization, they themselves need to be upskilled and reskilled on digitalization. Digitalization does not figure in the areas handled by typical TVET institutions. It is more of the domain of the higher education institutions. This is one of the reasons that many experts are now arguing that it is important to link our TVET institutions with higher educational institutions so that they can upgrade their capacity on digitalization, and also to ensure a seamless pathway for learners to the institutions more adapted to handle the high-end technology. Finally, let us look to the future. Recently, we have done a trends analysis of the TVET system of the future. Here, I will highlight the three key aspects, key characteristics of TVET system of the future. First, a performing future TVET system must teach transversal, multidimensional, and higher level of skills. It is no longer singular, ready-to-apply skills that will be demanded. It is more the potential for future workers to adapt themselves to the required that will count. Second, a performing future TVET system must collect and analyze data and forecast what is to come. The world will change even faster. So the ability to forecast the next round of skills that will be demanded is critical to survive. Third, a performing future TVET system must be agile to train the TVET teachers, teaching staff vis-a-vis the skills demanded. If the system cannot make a quick adjustment to the training needs of TVET teachers, it will face a greater challenge than now to remain relevant. Thank you, and then I wish you a very successful discussion.
Thank you very much. And with that, we conclude the webinar for today. Again, I would like to express my deep appreciation to all participants and all panelists from UNESCO-UNEVOC, from Shenzhen, and also from Unkumhua Polytechnic. I would also like to thank very much for the collaboration that we have received from UNESCO-UNEVOC as part of a very strong partner to make sure that this webinar is successful. I would also like to apologize for the confusion about the timing. We hope that everyone has got a chance to see the video towards the end. Also, for your information, this whole webinar is being recorded, and it will be on this website in 1 or 2 days, so that you can always view it for any amount of time that you feel you are ready to see it again. So with that, I would like to thank everyone, and I hope that everyone has had a very interesting webinar session with all the 3 inputs, and I hope this is not the last one. This will be the first of many webinars that we will be conducting with UNESCO-UNEVOC, so that we can always share our thoughts and practices for the betterment of TVET. Thank you very much. And also on behalf of Dr. Sam, we would like to thank from DPPCE, the Malaysian Polytechnic UNEVOC Network, and we would like to see you soon in years to come. Thank you very much.